Acceptance versus denial, the decision that changes everything. Reality does not change because we refuse to face it. It simply waits until we are ready to acknowledge it. Think about that for a moment. No matter how hard we try to ignore reality, it doesn't disappear. It simply waits. It waits until we're ready to face it. And sooner or later, every one of us reaches that moment, whether it comes through failure, heartbreak, financial struggles, poor health, disappointment, or unexpected change. Life eventually presents us with a choice between acceptance and denial. Although both are responses to the same situation, they lead to completely different outcomes. So before we go any further, let's first understand what these two words really mean. Let's begin with denial. Denial is more than refusing to believe the truth. It is choosing temporary comfort over lasting growth. It is convincing yourself that everything is fine when, deep inside, you know it isn't. It often sounds like this: it's not that serious. Things will fix themselves. It's someone else's fault. I'll deal with it later. I don't have a problem. At first, these thoughts may seem harmless. In fact, they can even make us feel better for a little while, but only for a little while, because reality doesn't pause simply because we refuse to acknowledge it. The bills continue to arrive, the relationship continues to break down, our health continues to decline, the opportunities continue to pass us by. Life continues moving forward whether we are ready or not, and that's the danger of denial. It doesn't stop reality, it only delays our response to reality. The longer we delay, the heavier the burden often becomes. Now, if denial keeps us trapped, what does acceptance do? That naturally brings us to the other choice: acceptance. Acceptance is often misunderstood. Many people think acceptance means giving up. Others think it means becoming weak. Some even believe acceptance means settling for less. But acceptance is none of those things. Acceptance is acknowledging reality so that you can begin moving forward. Acceptance says, "This is my situation. I may not like it, but I will face it. What can I learn from this? What is my next step? I can still build a better future." Notice something. Acceptance doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't pretend the disappointment never happened. It doesn't remove the challenge overnight. Instead, it gives pain a purpose. It shifts our attention away from what has already happened and redirects our focus toward what we can still do. And perhaps that's why this next thought is so powerful. The hardest truths to accept are often the ones with the greatest power to transform our lives. Think about your own life. If you're honest with yourself, what truth have you been avoiding? What conversation have you postponed? What decision have you delayed because accepting reality feels uncomfortable? Sometimes we already know the answer. We simply don't want to admit it. Yet the moment we finally become honest with ourselves, something remarkable begins to happen. We stop making excuses. We stop blaming everyone else. We stop waiting for life to magically change. Instead, we begin changing ourselves, and that's where growth begins. But perhaps you're wondering, what does this actually look like in everyday life? Because acceptance and denial aren't just theories, they're decisions we make every single day. They're found in our homes, our relationships, our workplaces, our finances, our dreams, and even in the conversations we have with ourselves. So let's make this practical. Let's begin with one area where many people struggle the most: relationships. Relationships have a unique way of revealing the difference between acceptance and denial. Sometimes deep down, you already know that something has changed. The love is no longer the same. The respect has faded. Communication has broken down. The laughter that once filled the relationship has been replaced by silence, arguments, or emotional distance. Yet instead of accepting what is happening, we often begin negotiating with reality. We tell ourselves, maybe they'll change, maybe if I love them more, maybe if I'm more patient, maybe next month will be different, maybe this is just a phase. Now don't misunderstand me. Hope is a beautiful thing. Commitment is a beautiful thing. Relationships go through difficult seasons, and not every challenge means it's time to walk away. But hope should never blind us to reality. There comes a point where every person has to pause and ask an honest question. Am I fighting for a relationship that still exists, or am I holding on to one that ended a long time ago? That question is difficult, but avoiding it is often even more painful. You see, acceptance doesn't always mean leaving. Sometimes acceptance simply means admitting that something is wrong. It means accepting that the relationship needs help. It means accepting that counseling may be necessary. It means accepting that both people must be willing to work on it. And sometimes acceptance means recognizing that you cannot force someone to love you, you cannot force someone to respect you, and you cannot build a relationship alone. If you've done everything you reasonably can and the other person has already emotionally walked away, continuing to deny that reality may only deepen your pain. Acceptance gives you something denial never can: freedom. Freedom to stop pretending, freedom to stop forcing, freedom to heal, freedom to rediscover your peace, freedom to begin rebuilding your life. Because sometimes the greatest act of self respect is accepting what you cannot change. But this principle doesn't end with relationships. In fact, it reaches into another area where many people quietly struggle every single day: our work, our careers. Perhaps you've been in the same job for years. Every morning you wake up feeling exhausted before the day has even begun. You no longer enjoy the work. You've stopped growing. You feel overlooked, unappreciated, emotionally drained. Yet every year you keep telling yourself, maybe things will improve. Maybe they'll finally recognize my efforts. Maybe next year will be different. I'll just hold on a little longer. Again, patience is a virtue, perseverance is important, but there is also wisdom in recognizing when a season has come to an end. Acceptance doesn't necessarily mean resigning tomorrow. It means honestly evaluating where you are. It means asking yourself, am I still growing here? Is this environment helping me become a better version of myself? Is staying here benefiting me, or is it slowly destroying my confidence, my health, and my peace? Sometimes we remain in situations simply because we're afraid of starting again. But what if the very opportunity you've been praying for is waiting on the other side of acceptance? What if accepting that one chapter has ended is exactly what allows the next chapter to begin? Perhaps that's true not only in our careers, perhaps it's true in every area of life, because whenever we refuse to face reality, the emotional weight doesn't disappear, it grows, quietly, slowly, until one day it becomes heavier than we ever imagined. And that brings us to something many people rarely talk about: the emotional cost of living in denial. The emotional cost of living in denial is often invisible. From the outside, everything may appear normal. People may still smile, they may still go to work, they may continue posting on social media, they may even tell everyone they're fine, but internally, they are carrying a weight that grows heavier every single day. That's why acceptance matters so much. When we look at many of the heartbreaking stories we hear today, we often see people who reached a breaking point after carrying emotional burdens for far too long. We hear about depression, we hear about anxiety, we hear about families falling apart, we hear about people harming those they once loved, we hear about people taking their own lives. Now, it's important to say this clearly. Not every tragedy happens because of denial. Mental health challenges are complex, and there are many different factors involved. But one thing is true: living with unresolved pain, ignoring reality, pretending everything is okay, or believing things will magically change while nothing actually changes, can leave a person feeling trapped, overwhelmed, and hopeless. That's why it's so important to stop and reflect. Acceptance creates space, space to breathe, space to think clearly, space to seek advice, space to ask for help, space to make healthier decisions before emotions take control. And perhaps that's one of the greatest gifts acceptance gives us: perspective. Because once we accept reality, we stop reacting emotionally to everything around us. Instead, we begin responding wisely, and wisdom changes everything. It changes the decisions we make. It changes the people we surround ourselves with. It changes the boundaries we set. It changes the future we create. Which brings us back to one simple but life-changing truth. The hardest truths to accept are often the ones with the greatest power to transform our lives. The truth may be uncomfortable, but the truth also brings clarity, and clarity brings direction. When we finally accept the truth, we stop making excuses. We stop blaming everyone else. We stop waiting for life to rescue us. Instead, we begin taking responsibility for what we can change. Acceptance changes the questions we ask. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we begin asking, "What can I learn from this? What is this season teaching me? What is my next step? What can I control from this moment forward?" Those questions shift us from being victims of our circumstances to becoming active participants in shaping our future. They remind us that while we may not always control what happens to us, we can always choose how we respond. And perhaps that is where real transformation begins. Your circumstances may not change overnight. Your pain may not disappear immediately. Your journey may still require courage, but your direction can change today. The moment you stop resisting reality is the moment you give yourself permission to heal, permission to grow, permission to let go, permission to rebuild, permission to begin again. Because acceptance is not choosing defeat. It is choosing wisdom. It is choosing peace. It is choosing freedom. And ultimately, it is choosing life. Acceptance is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your transformation. Now, before you move on, I'd like you to take a moment, pause, and quietly reflect on your own life. Think about what is happening around you right now. Your relationships, your career, your health, your finances, your dreams, your peace of mind. Perhaps this message was meant for someone else. Or perhaps it was meant for you. Perhaps there is an area of your life where you've been holding on, not because it's healthy, but because letting go feels frightening. Maybe you've been afraid of disappointing others. Maybe you've been afraid of starting over. Maybe you've been afraid of being alone. Or perhaps you've simply become comfortable with what is familiar, even though it is hurting you. Fear has a way of convincing us that staying where we are is safer than moving forward. But sometimes the greatest risk isn't letting go. Sometimes the greatest risk is holding on to something that is slowly destroying your peace. Never allow fear to imprison your future. You deserve the freedom to make wise decisions. You deserve the freedom to choose peace over pressure. You deserve the freedom to walk away from what no longer serves your well-being. And you deserve the freedom to begin again without feeling guilty for choosing yourself. Choosing acceptance doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've become honest. It means you've recognized that your happiness, your peace, your dignity, and your future matter too, because there comes a time when holding on no longer demonstrates strength. It simply prolongs unnecessary pain. So today, don't ask yourself, what if I let go? Instead, ask, what could become possible if I finally accepted reality? Because sometimes the freedom you've been searching for doesn't begin when your circumstances change. It begins the moment you give yourself permission to choose peace over fear, wisdom over denial, and hope over uncertainty. That decision could become the beginning of the best chapter of your life, because the moment you accept reality, you stop allowing fear to write your story. You stop living as a prisoner of uncertainty. You stop carrying burdens that were never yours to carry forever. You stop surviving and you start living. Many people remain trapped in survival mode, not because they lack strength or ability, but because they continue denying the reality standing right in front of them. They keep waiting for things to change while refusing to accept what has already changed. They hold on to what no longer brings peace, hoping that somehow tomorrow will be different. But life truly begins the moment you accept what is, so that you can begin creating what could be. Acceptance doesn't imprison you. Acceptance sets you free. It gives you the freedom to choose, the freedom to heal, the freedom to grow, the freedom to let go without guilt, the freedom to begin again. And perhaps that's the greatest gift acceptance gives us, not the freedom from challenges, but the freedom to stop merely surviving them and to start living the life you deserve. And here's one final thought I'd like to leave with you. Time never pauses while we struggle to make peace with reality. It keeps moving. Days become weeks, weeks become months, months become years, and before we know it, we realize we weren't just holding on to a situation. We were letting precious time slip away. There's a saying that goes, don't lose a diamond while chasing stones. Take a moment to think about what that really means. Sometimes we become so determined to make something work after it has already run its course that we fail to see the new opportunities waiting right in front of us. We become so consumed with chasing what is no longer serving us that we completely overlook what could truly transform our lives. Perhaps there's a relationship where you'll be genuinely loved, valued and appreciated while you're holding on to one where you're constantly being taken for granted. Perhaps there's a career that will recognize your gifts while you're exhausting yourself trying to prove your worth in a place that never will. Perhaps there's a business opportunity with greater potential while you're pouring all your energy into one that continues to drain your finances, your confidence, and your hope. The danger is not simply that you remain where you are. The greater danger is that, while you're busy chasing stones, you completely overlook the diamond that is waiting for you out there. Perhaps it's a healthier relationship where you'll be genuinely loved, valued, and appreciated. Perhaps it's a career that will finally recognize your worth and create opportunities for you to grow. Perhaps it's a business opportunity that will bring the breakthrough you've been working so hard for. Or perhaps it's simply a life filled with greater peace, freedom, purpose, and fulfillment. This isn't about giving up at the first sign of difficulty. It's about being honest enough to recognize the difference between perseverance and denial, because they are not the same. Perseverance keeps moving toward a worthwhile purpose. Denial keeps holding on to what reality has already revealed is no longer working. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up on your future. It means refusing to waste your future fighting for something that no longer belongs in it. Sometimes the opportunities we've been praying for only become visible when we finally let go of what has been holding us back. Sometimes the door you've been waiting to open cannot be seen because you're still standing in front of a door that has already closed. You'll never discover what's waiting for you if you continue holding on to what reality has already shown you is no longer working. So don't lose a diamond while chasing stones. Don't allow fear to keep you attached to what no longer gives you peace. Don't let denial steal years that could have been spent growing, healing, loving, and living, because sometimes the life you've been praying for isn't found by holding on. It's found by having the courage to accept, to let go, and to move forward. The greatest relationship, the greatest career, the greatest business opportunity, the greatest breakthrough, or even the greatest version of yourself may already be waiting for you out there, and you'll only discover it on the other side of acceptance.